in history where humankind has entered a new era kind of unintentionally. Like decisions have been made, technologies have been developed, and suddenly the world has changed, and it may possibly in a way that's worse for everyone. So one of the examples you give in *Sapiens* is just the whole agricultural revolution, which for an actual person tilling the fields, they just picked up a 12-hour back-breaking workday instead of 6 hours in the jungle and a much more interesting lifestyle. So are we at another possible phase change here, where we kind of sleepwalk into a future that none of us actually wants?
Yes, very much so. During the agricultural revolution, what happened is that an immense technological and economic revolution empowered the human collective. But when you look at actual individual lives, the life of a tiny elite became much better, and the life of the majority of people became considerably worse. And this can happen again in the 21st century. No doubt, the new technologies will empower the human collective. But we may end up again with a tiny elite reaping all the benefits, taking all the fruits, and the masses of the population finding themselves in worse than they were before. Certainly much worse than this tiny elite.
So what he's talking about actually is before you had the capitalists, right? The capitalists versus the capitalists and the people, the
agriculture.
Well, basically the capitalists who put down the money for the factories and who got their basically without putting in any labor. So the laborers put in their time and their money, but they barely made ends meet because all the profits of the factories went to the owners of the factory. So the capitalists, they made all the money. So a lot of people, they were worse off in the initial the first industrial revolution. The people who worked in the factories, especially in England in the textile industry, the situation was deplorable. There was a lot of smog. People lived in poor circumstances. It was terrible. So as a whole, the world saw progress. Money was being made, but it only fell into the hands of a few people. Now the history is very. I mean, we are at danger of letting history repeat itself. Introducing new technologies that will have a positive impact as a whole, but if we don't address the global distribution problem with this new wealth and the fact that there are winners and losers, we will create the same situation as we did during the first industrial revolution.
These elites might not even be human elites. They might be cyborgs.
Yeah, they could be enhanced superhumans, they could be cyborgs, they could be completely non-organic elites, they could even be non-conscious algorithms. What we see now in the world is authority shifting away from humans to algorithms, more and more decisions about...
That sounds very futuristic, but if you think about it, this is already happening. Right? If you look at, for example, the financial markets, trading is not being done by humans anymore. It's done by algorithms. Algorithms are now the new traders. All these guys that we know from the movies who are on the floor making trades and buy and sell, this is now completely automized, and it's done by algorithms. So if it can happen in the financial markets, or it's already happening in the financial markets, why wouldn't it be possible in other markets as well?
Lives, about economic matters, about political matters, is actually being taken by algorithms. If you ask the bank for a loan, chances are your fate is decided by an algorithm, not by a human being. And the general impression is that maybe Homo sapiens just lost it. The world is so complicated. There is so much data. Things are changing so fast that this thing that evolved on the African savannah tens of thousands of years ago to cope with a particular environment, a particular volume of information and data, it just can't handle the realities of the 21st century. And the only thing that may be able to handle it is big data algorithms. So no wonder that more and more authority is shifting from us to the algorithms.
So we're in New York City for the first of a series of TED dialogues with Yuval Harari. There's a Facebook Live audience out there. We're excited to have you with us. We're going to start coming to some of your questions and questions of people in the room in just a few minutes. So have those coming. Yuval, if you're going to make the argument that we need to get past nationalism because of the coming technological danger, in a way, that presented by so much of what's happening. So we've got to have a global conversation about this. Trouble is, it's really hard to get people really believing that, I don't know, AI really is an imminent threat and so forth. The things that people, some people at least, care about much more immediately, perhaps, is climate change and perhaps other issues like refugees, nuclear weapons, and so forth. How would you argue that in where we are right now, that somehow those issues need to be dialed up? But I mean, so you've talked a lot about climate change, but I mean, Trump has said he doesn't believe in that. So we can't, in a way, your most powerful argument, you can't actually use to make this case.
Yeah, I think with climate change, at first sight, it's quite surprising that there is a very close correlation between nationalism and climate change. I mean, almost always the people who deny climate change are nationalists. And at first sight, you think, why? What's the connection? Why don't you have socialists denying climate change? But then when you think about it, it's obvious. Because nationalism has no solution to climate change, if you want to be a nationalist in the 21st century, you have to deny the problem. If you accept the reality of the problem, then you must accept that, yes, there is still room in the world for patriotism, there is still room in the world for having special loyalties and obligations towards your own people, towards your own country. I don't think anybody's really thinking of abolishing that. But in order to confront climate change, we need additional loyalties and commitments to a level beyond the nation. And it should not be impossible, because people can have several layers of loyalty. You can be loyal to your family and to your community.
To some of your questions and questions of people in the room in just a few minutes. So have those coming.
Really?
Yuval, if you're going to make the argument that we need to get past nationalism because of the coming technological danger, in a way, that presented by so much of what's happening. So we've got to have a global conversation about this. Trouble is, it's really hard to get people really believing that, I don't know, AI really is an imminent threat and so forth. The things that people, some people at least, care about much more immediately, perhaps, is climate change and perhaps other issues like refugees, nuclear weapons, and so forth. How would you argue that in where we are right now, that somehow those issues need to be dialed up? But I mean, so you've talked a lot about climate change, but I mean, Trump has said he doesn't believe in that. So we can't, in a way, your most powerful argument, you can't actually use to make this case.
Yeah, I think with climate change, at first sight, it's quite surprising that there is a very close correlation between nationalism and climate change. I mean, almost always the people who deny climate change are nationalists. And at first sight, you think, why? What's the connection? Why don't you have socialists denying climate change? But then when you think about it, it's obvious. Because nationalism has no solution to climate change, if you want to be a nationalist in the 21st century, you have to deny the problem. If you accept the reality of the problem, then you must accept that, yes, there is still room in the world for patriotism, there is still room in the world for having special loyalties and obligations towards your own people, towards your own country. I don't think anybody's really thinking of abolishing that. But
so you get his argument?
No, he's talking about climate change and nationalism. This is wrong.
Right, basically, nationalism cannot deal with climate change.
No, not nationalism.
Nationalism cannot deal with climate change.
But
So what he was asking
he is
himself.
talking about Trump is nationalism.
So
and
Trump is a
climate change.
nationalist, and he denies climate change.
No,
he doesn't
background
believe
different.
Sorry.
Background different. He is talking about Trump is just only considered for the America. That's the reason why climate change get worse. No, this is not wrong. Not right.
No, that's
No.
not what he's saying. Sorry, that's not.
Trump is not saying because Trump saying deny climate change is not because of the nationalism.
No, what he's saying is that actually, how come that so many people who are nationalists are also
He is relating nationalism and the climate change, but this is wrong. Not he
Why?
just why because he is talking about if he's thinking about specific country and climate change will not get better, he said. But this is wrong.
why?
Why? Because nationalism is just only that country by country just thinking about own thinking about their own country.
Yes.
But this is bad impact on climate change. This is different. He's just jumping his theory.
No.
Okay.
What he's saying different.
He's just connecting nationalism and climate change. This is nothing relationship with each other.
Well,
This is my opinion.
okay, but it's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that there is a strong correlation between nationalist leaders and denying
Yeah, I
climate change.
understand. But this is
Why
wrong.
is it? But why is it? No, it's not this is wrong or right. It's just there is a correlation. Very often, nationalist leaders are climate change deniers. Why is that? Not whether it's right or wrong. That's not what he's saying. He's just saying, how come so many nationalist leaders are also deniers of climate change? That's what he's asking.
Yes, but this is no
So-
correlations.
How do you know? Did you study?
Nationalism and climate change. Just he's talking about that, but this is nationalism and climate change, no correlations. Okay?
How do you know that? Did you study
But,
it?
but
Did you
no,
measure
no,
this?
no.
It's not a matter of opinion. That's just a matter of measuring.
He is talking about that, but it's my why he is talking about that?
It's not an opinion, Uno-san. This is just why the question is. It's not an
Oh,
opinion.
okay, it's a phenomenon.
It's a phenomenon.
Okay.
Yes,
That's
it's a
phenomenon.
Yes, it's a phenomenon.
My
But
opinion.
why
just-
is it?
he never tell that?
Yeah, he does.
No, he never tell that.
He does.
What he said?
So, if you listen carefully, you can hear that the argument that he's making is that.
I know that. That's coincidental.
Why coincidentally?
Coincidentally.
Okay, so what he's
he
suggesting.
said nationalists were going to deny climate change. Okay,
Why?
so what?
No, what he's saying is that basically this is not a problem you can solve on a national level. Climate change. There is no solution for climate change because climate change is something that transcends borders. Climate change is being caused by CO2s, if you believe it. And that, as such, is a transnational problem.
Of course.
だから,
So what?
you see so many people who are nationalists don't have any solution for a transnational problem because they only focus on their own country. That's why many nationalist leaders deny climate change.
So this is jumping.
Well,
Logic jumping.
it's logic jumping.
Yeah.
I think it's a very logical, persuasive argument.
No,
okay,
not
maybe.
persuasive.
Okay, the point is actually, how are you going to solve transnational problems if you are focusing only on your own country?
Philosophically thinking about nationalists never accept climate change, so nationalism never solve climate change. This is wrong.
No.
Logical jump.
The question that he's asking is, do we have any solution? Can we solve climate change? Can we solve technological development if we are going to only focus on our own country?
No, cannot solve it.
That's his point.
Yeah,
You
no, can
agree?
solve- Yeah,
You agree?
but he said nationalist denies climate change.
No, the point that he's trying to make is that certain problems, certain things that are happening around us, we cannot solve on a national level.
No, we cannot solve national level.
Exactly. That's his point.
But his point is different. His point is
Uno-san.
nationalism.
I suggest that we make a bet on this. I'm 100% convinced
Climate
that this
change,
is what
okay.
he's saying.
Okay, climate change cannot solve by country by country. Okay, climate change can be solved by global.
Exactly. That's his point.
Okay,
That's
go
his
ahead,
point. So
go ahead.
nationalism versus globalism. The point he's trying to make is that nationalism
But
cannot
I
solve
tell you,
big
I tell you. So
problems.
what?
So
Of course, everybody understand. Ordinary people, everybody understand. Okay, climate change should be solved by global.
okay, but if everybody understands this, Una-san,
Yeah,
why are so many people following nationalist leaders?
yeah.
Because our real issues are with technology. Our real issues are with climate change. Those are our long-term interests. How come, if everybody understands this, people follow nationalist leaders? Because they don't have solutions to our real problems. That is the issue. Nobody understands
So
this.
the last sentence, I don't agree.
Okay.
Okay?
Why not? Now this is...
Yeah, this is okay. Nationalists cannot solve climate change. Just nationalists consider for globally to apply for climate change. They can solve it. Why not?
No, they only focus on their own country. They cannot solve it.
No.
You
They
need to
can.
work together in order
No.
to...
If you're going to focus on just only Trump, but she does not recognize what is the climate change. That's the reason why, not nationalists.
He doesn't have a solution for it because he cannot solve it.
No. She just should understand what is climate change. But his logic, okay, okay. I understand. Climate change should be solved by global standpoint.
Right.
Everybody thinking about that.
Right.
Okay, so this is true.
Right. So if that is true, then shouldn't our
But I
the
don't
way that
agree.
we're going
I
to
don't agree. Nationalists cannot solve climate change. This is I don't agree.
well let's
Logical jump.
let's put it this way. I would say that our global problems are much better solved in a non-nationalist policy in a country that is non-nationalist versus a global approach. Certain problems require a global approach because they are global problems. So if we are instead moving away from our global perspective, focusing back onto our own countries, then we are losing sight of the bigger issues: technological development, climate change.
This is
This
a logical jump. This is a logical jump.
I don't see where do I jump in this
Yeah,
logic?
this nationalist is never understand climate change. This is wrong.
No, that's not what he's saying. That's not what he's saying. You are
He
making
is saying-
no, you're logical
Okay,
fallacy. Actually,
he's
not even a
saying-
jump, a fallacy. You're
He's
making
saying climate change should be handled by global level. Okay, what he's saying.
no. He's
No?
not saying. He's saying a global problem is better off when you keep a global perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's
Right.
what he's saying. He's not saying it's impossible for a nationalist
Okay,
to solve
I agree,
climate
but
change.
that is not anything relationship with nationalist.
Of course there is.
No.
Of course there is.
Nationalist and global perspective is different issue.
Of course there is.
No, different issue.
If you are always thinking about your own country, how can you deal with
No.
global
No,
problems?
but also they should consider for climate change. In Trump case, so far he just denied the global change.
How come so many people, so many nationalist leaders deny climate change? Why?
He is going to change anyway. Obviously, this is wrong.
Well, obviously, Uno-san, he
No,
decided
to
take
what
away.
my opinion is, definition is I don't agree with what he said. Nationalists never see at the standpoint global issue.
No, that's not what he says. That's
But-
what you are saying. That's not what he says.
What he said.
What he says is that global problems are better served with a global perspective. So what we are seeing is that we are more changing our focus from our global problems and trying to find local solutions, right? Local approach. Nationalists focus on their national interest. They are building walls
cannot solve the
around-
local approach.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
This is the common
That's
sense.
what he's saying.
This is common sense what
Yes.
he's talking about. But why he's talking about nationalists?
Nationalists like Trump, they put a border at they put a Mexican border, but that's not where the problem is coming from. The problem is coming
Of course.
from technological development. So Trump's border is not going to solve anything in the long run because he's trying to treat this as a local problem. But it's a global problem. Technology. So that's why he's saying the nationalist approach is basically ignoring the global problem, the bigger picture.
Yeah, but this is I just jumping logic for border understand. But jumping to the climate change, no. This is too jump.
He does not want to ignore it. He does not want to acknowledge it. That it's the same logic.
No, this is not adaptable for the nationalistic idea versus global,
It's the same way. You're trying to solve.
Okay, just
how are you going to?
No, we can make a discussion about border. Okay, border is too much for protect their own country. I understand, and also that the same logic is adopting Trump. He does not deny the climate change. These are different issues.
It's not because actually basically you need to climate change doesn't you cannot do this by yourself.
No, not can by yourself.
So
you need to think about.
You need to collaborate. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, this is the common sense.
Exactly.
This is common
but
sense.
Nationalists do not work together.
This is jumping.
No, this is not jumping.
No.
Nationalists do not work together. They are not treating this as a global problem. They say we want to do less, and we're going to try to force it on you.
This is just a moment. This is too much selfish.
No, that's nationalism.
No.
That's too selfish.
No, I don't think Trump is too selfish.
He's too selfish. Way too selfish. This is
definition. Okay, this is definition of how we're going to make judgment. But this is I'm skeptical about his opinions. Okay, I understand war. Okay, I understand AI, robotics. I understand, but I don't understand climate change. This one, then this one. Is my observation. Is logic jump. Okay, he is selfish. He never think about the overseas, outside the country. He is a kind of person, too much selfish person. This is nationalist. This is wrong.
Uno-san, how if you are only going to focus on your country and the interest of your country, how can you rhyme that by getting other countries to collaborate to lower their CO2 output? How are you going to do that?
Of course.
How are you going to make this?
I tell you, CO2 is, I don't want to talk about this CO2 discussion, but climate change you need to consider for global level.
Yes.
This is everybody thinking about this common sense, even though children understand.
Yes.
Okay? He should understand it, but I don't know what the background, what he's thinking about. Okay? And we don't make decisively, okay, he's wrong. Don't tell that.
Uno-san, your argument doesn't make it doesn't. I don't
understand. Okay. I just A and B and so C. Some cases not adapting. Okay. And okay, wall.
You really don't make sense.
Okay, just wait. Border wall, AI, now climate change. No, just wait a minute.
No, just take the thing out of what he said. Let's think about the other. Just focus on climate change. We agreed that climate change is a global problem.
Yeah, I understand.
So you need to treat it as a global problem, not as a national problem.
Of course, no,
right?
No, not national problem.
Okay, so that's what he's saying. This is not a national problem. This is a global problem. So let's treat it as a global problem.
Exactly.
So nationalist government is not the most
Now
suitable.
this is jumping. Now he's criticizing Trump. This is logical jump.
First of all, he's not naming Trump. He's just naming the fact. No, you're implying what he's saying. There is no logical fallacy. It's not jumping.
But he's talking about nationalist. Okay.
Yes.
Nationalist.
Yes.
But this is not nationalist. Not nationalist. Not nationalist. Nationalism, I understand. Okay. Climate change cannot solve by nationalism thinking approach.
Yes.
Cannot solve it. They should consider for global level. Okay.
So no, actually, that's not even what he's saying.
He's saying.
No, that's not what he's saying.
No. He's saying nationalist. This is what I can't understand what he said.
Nationalist in the 21st century.
Yeah.
But then when you think about it, it's obvious because